Thank you all for joining us tonight. My name is Jessie Wachter. I'm a Global Programs Advisor for Rustic Pathways. I have worked with Rustic for about 10 years now, actually just over 10 years, and I was formerly the director of our Tanzania programs, but I've led programs in about 10 different countries, and I'm happy to answer any and all questions that you have about our programs in the US and elsewhere in the world. And tonight we are joined by a special guest, Kate Lubina. I'd like to have her take a second to introduce herself.
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Kate. I've been with Rustic Pathways for about 5 years, and I'm the director of our USA programs.
Thanks for joining us, Kate. I will go over briefly kind of what to expect on this webinar. We'll probably try and keep this to 20 to 30 minutes in the interest of time. We will talk a little bit about Rustic Pathways if you're brand new to us, the countries where we operate in the world, programs specifically in the United States, which is the topic of tonight's webinar. I will touch on how to enroll. So as soon as you finish this presentation, hopefully you've got all your questions answered and you're ready to hit that application. And then we will have some time at the end for your questions and answers. Feel free as we go through the presentation to send in your questions in the questions and answers section, and then we'll get to them either during the presentation or afterwards. And Rustic Pathways, we've been around for about 37 years now. We have about 100 different programs to choose from in about 17 different countries. We really do see ourselves as the intersection between education, travel, and philanthropy. And we are working with students in middle school, high school, and college during a really pivotal time in their lives when they're trying to decide who they want to be and where they want to go in life, what they want to do in life, what they want to study. And we think this is a really valuable opportunity for them to get out in the world, meet students from around the world, meet elders and communities from around the world, and really kind of get a much more well-rounded education that you can kind of get in your own backyard oftentimes. We did have students from more than 60 different countries that joined us last year. So on top of the addition or the ability to get out into the world and meet people locally, you'll have students also from around the world joining on this adventure. So it's kind of a really fun opportunity, and we do have a really wide range of opportunities depending on what the student is looking for. So we have service programs. About 75% of our programs have some sort of service element to them, and we have several different types of service depending on the student's interests. We also have education programs, which are photography, language immersion, medical certification, things like that. And then we also have purely adventure programs, in addition to programs that have a nice balance thereof and kind of a combination of all of the above. So no matter what you're looking for, we hope to have a program that's a perfect fit for you that allows you to kind of expand your worldview and start you on that adventure out into the world. We, as I mentioned, have about 17 countries in operation now. If you include our custom school groups, it goes out to about 20. So we are all over the world in every region. Tonight we are going to talk about our programs in the United States, which we have several in the continental United States or the contiguous United States. And we also have Alaska and Hawaii. So we will get to those now. Again, if you're just joining us, if you have any questions specifically about these programs, feel free to type them in the questions and answers box, and we will get to them at the end of the presentation. But Kate, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little bit of the history of Rustic Pathways programs in the United States.
Yeah, happily. So Rustic Pathways USA programs started off in 2006. One of our main hubs since that time has been our programs in New Orleans. And we've since then expanded to different places. And currently we're operating, this summer, we're going to be operating 4 different programs in 5 unique locations. And so I can kind of jump into talking a quick summary about those, and we can get into some more details as we go. But one of our most service intensive programs is our Rebuilding the American Dream program. That spends a week in Houston and a week in New Orleans. And that's a really amazing service focused program. In Houston, they're working with hurricane relief, post-Hurricane Harvey, with an amazing service project, rebuilding homes, learning about a little bit about Texas culture, you know, all of that fun stuff. Visit the NASA Center, boardwalk, rodeo. So it's a really fun time in Houston. And then the group travels to New Orleans together, where they spend that week as well doing a lot of community service, but also exploring a lot more of the amazing, unique cultural components that New Orleans has to offer. And then students are able to kind of see that compare and contrast of, you know, a city that's recently gone through a natural disaster and then a city that's been almost 15 years in the recovery process, and kind of what that conversation looks like in both of those places. Then we have programs in, go ahead,
Oh,
Jessie.
it is kind of crazy that it has already been 15 years and yet there's still a need for this effort in New
Yeah.
Orleans.
Yeah, it's crazy. So something that I just recently heard that I hadn't heard before, the anticipated recovery period post-Katrina was actually 15 to 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just now approaching that time, which is, I hadn't realized that prior to hearing that fact.
Personally, since I've been with Rustic, like I said, about 10 years. Rustic Pathways Spring Break New Orleans was actually my first program that I ever led with Rustic Pathways, which was now a few years ago. And I always found that it was fascinating for students to feel like they had to go really far outside the country to get this culture. And New Orleans has such a vibrant, interesting, unique culture that I think a lot of the students were kind of blown away with not only the feeling of doing service in your own kind of quote unquote backyard, but also the difference just another state next door can make just in getting to Texas or to New Orleans, and the difference between their own home state. So kind of fun.
Yeah, totally. And New Orleans is such a unique place, especially with French colonial, Spanish, American, African influences. It's this like very unique melting pot that you don't see really anywhere else in the country. So it does really, like you said, feel like this completely different cultural experience for students too, which is awesome.
A lot of students that would end up going to Tulane or another university because they just absolutely fell in love with the area. So
yeah, it's hard to get away. You're like, oh, this is really cool. Yeah, I'm here now. I spend about half my year here now, so it's a beautiful city. It's really, really cool.
Awesome.
Yeah, so we love New Orleans. Then our other programs, to just jump around a little bit, I'll sort of start moving west. We'll go to California. That's a 2-week traveling program. I kind of explain this as like the most beautiful road trip you will ever take, and really hits all of the California highlights. Does a lot of camping. It's very camping focused, but it's also very accessible. So students who have never done camping before, you know, can still feel comfortable and learn a lot of those skills without it being too extreme in terms of the remoteness and sort of the wilderness aspect of that. So we start off in and out of San Francisco, head over to Tahoe, which is incredible in the summertime, do some hiking and some kayaking, camping in Tahoe, then head over to the Eastern Sierras. So we're going into Yosemite National Park, Mono Lake, June Lake, and then from there, we're also doing some community service in that part of the Eastern Sierras and doing things like conservation work, trail maintenance, and just kind of making sure that we're having a positive impact in these places that are really big, you know, tourist destinations for a big chunk of the year, that we're maintaining the ecosystem and, you know, kind of gaining an appreciation for that as well. And then from the Eastern Sierras, we actually head back out to the coast. And then we're spending a couple of nights in Big Sur and Santa Cruz. Students are obviously taking a surf lesson, exploring some of the really beautiful coastline, some of those iconic views, McWay Falls and Bixby Bridge, and kind of driving up the coast, and then staying in Santa Cruz for a night, a couple of nights before heading back into San Francisco, where they'll have the opportunity to explore the city, and, you know, just kind of see again, like all of these like really beautiful, iconic California sites. I'm from California. I love California. It's amazing. So that's a really great one too. And then from there, we also have Hawaii. So to kind of continue on our environmental thread, and, you know, like we're on the Big Island for our program in Hawaii exclusively. We're spending 2 weeks on the Big Island, several days in Kona, several days in Volcano National Park, several days in Hilo, and then a night actually up in Waipio Valley, which is gorgeous. We're in pretty much each of those places doing environmentally geared service work, geared at replanting native plant and tree species. The Big Island of Hawaii actually was home to one of the the largest cattle ranch in the entire country at the turn of the century. And so there's a lot of organizations now that are working to kind of restore some of those native habitats and ecosystems, now that we kind of have an understanding and appreciation of the importance of those ecosystems and the biodiversity and climate of Hawaii. And then also, there's amazing wildlife and biodiversity and views, and each part of the island too is very geographically distinct, even though it's, fairly small island. The students are getting to see jungle and sort of more dry, arid landscapes, recent volcanic flow, which is really, really cool to appreciate just kind of like where this landmass comes from. Some like adventure highlights, we're doing zip lining, surfing, snorkeling, some hiking as well, a little bit of camping. So there's going to be a few nights of camping, but definitely, not as much as California and Alaska, a little bit of more of an introduction to that. And then the other accommodations we're going to be staying kind of more at guest house and style accommodations. And then should I jump into Alaska, or you want to stop me, Jessie?
Yeah, I was gonna say, before you jump into Alaska, we do have a question about the various accommodations, since you were just talking about accommodations on the California program.
Yes.
Can you go back a little bit, accommodations on our New Orleans and Texas program?
Yeah, so for our New Orleans and Texas program, for the portion that we are in Houston, the group is staying at, it's going to feel very much like a base house property. It's actually a university housing that we're using during the summer, but it's kind of like small, like apartment duplex style housing. So we'll have our own kitchen and living spaces, and students will be in private rooms separated by gender, with staff staying in adjacent rooms as well. So that's going to be fairly close, about 20 or 30 minutes drive to our service sites and activities that we're doing. So we're going to have about 3 to 4 students per room, kind of depending on the ultimate gender breakdown of each group. And it's going to kind of feel like, pretty like home-like comfortable accommodations, with like all the comforts of home there. And then when we're in New Orleans, we actually have a base house property that we use year round for all of our groups. And it's a big house. So there's 4 different bedrooms, and we have students are in sort of bunk bed style bedrooms, and then again, separated out by gender. And then we have like a great living and dining room. Common spaces are amazing. So for like activities and games and discussions in the evenings. And then we've got a fully stocked kitchen. So if anyone like ever needs a snack, they can just like go in and grab a snack or a drink of water, whatever it is. And it's a really cool, like communal type of feeling to it. So those are our accommodations for our rebuilding program.
And I think you mentioned that for our California program, it's a combination of a couple nights of camping and then mostly hotels and hostels.
That's for Hawaii. California, it's pretty much all camping, with the exception of the arrival and departure nights. Okay. So we're doing a lot of camping in California.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's cool, but it's very accessible camping. So we're not, in Alaska is going to be the most remote of our camping programs, but in California, it's, like very like defined campsites. So there's bathrooms that are always going to be accessible, and showers and that kind of thing, cooking areas.
Okay, and on to Alaska.
Also, Alaska is definitely our most remote, kind of like high adventure type of programs. We're doing like walking on an ice field, and a glacier. We're doing whitewater rafting. There's like I would say the most strenuous hike is about 10 miles round trip. So it's definitely a physically active and program for students who really enjoy being outside and like just being in this there's some pictures from Alaska up here, but just like being in this completely environmentally like stunning backdrop. And like truly, I think Alaska is like a once in a lifetime opportunity for a lot of people. It's super, super just like big and gorgeous and like impressive. And that's going to be all camping except for arrival and departure nights. Students are staying in Anchorage at a hotel. So aside from that,
Are
what's
students
that?
setting up their own tents?
I'm sorry.
Are students setting up their own tents?
Yeah, so we provide tent students. The packing list does include sleeping bags and pads depending on the location. But we basically, the first day, our staff do a gear check and make sure students, did arrive with all the appropriate gear before we really get out into the backcountry, have everything that they need, and understand how to use their gear too, which is super important. So our staff are very experienced in camping and in the backcountry. So they're going to walk students through how to set up a tent, proper camping protocols, things like that, both safety and just kind of like best practices that students need to know. So they will be setting up their own tents, breaking them down when they're moving locations and that kind of thing.
And just a kind of a quick segue, we do have a question about who our leaders are, and I'll kind of touch base on the general principles for Rustic Pathways, but essentially our program leaders, they have to be at least 22 years old. All of our full-time staff are WFR certified, which is Wilderness First Responder. And as I usually explain, it's basically one step below an EMT, but with an emphasis on wilderness medicine. So they're pretty highly medically trained and they can handle most of what happens on our programs. We obviously have secondary and third and fourth situations where if a student does have to visit a clinic or a hospital, they'll be contacted immediately. We also have all of our students who are traveling abroad. They're covered by ISOS insurance. Correct me if I'm wrong, Kate, this also includes Alaska?
Yeah, so our students within USA programs are covered with international SOS.
And that is emergency evacuation. So for whatever reason, whether it's a medical or political unrest in another country or something like that, they can be removed from that situation. So that's mandatory for all of our students. Something to keep in mind. Also, as parents, you will have to, our emergency hotline that we have open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And in addition to that, back to our program leaders, our company policy is no more than 7 students per staff member, but I would say the average is closer to 5 or 6 students per staff, depending on the size of the group. So never more than 7 students per staff. We always try to have at least 1 male and 1 female. And we always try to have, in the case of our other country programs, local and non-local staff whenever possible. Just kind of some background. Some programs will require additional certifications. They may be scuba certified or have a higher medical certification or language certification, anything like that, depending on the specific program. And Kate, maybe you can touch on the type of leaders or the background that some of the program leaders have for your Alaska program.
Yeah, so specifically for our Alaska program, we actually have a really great mix of program leaders who will be with us this summer, all of whom are multi-year veterans working with Rustic Pathways. So they've been working with Rustic for at least a couple of seasons. A few people have been program leading with Rustic for much longer and have been all over the world. Some have led programs in Nepal and South Pacific. One of our program leaders has years of wilderness therapy experience before coming to Rustic, and he was actually with us leading programs in Alaska last year. And so we've got a really great mix. As Jessie said, 2 of our 3 program leaders are WFR certified, who will be leading in Alaska as well. So yeah, they're really, really great, really fun and high energy and interesting people. So they're super excited for the summer, as are we.
Always. And it sounds like for our service program, since we have 4 different programs, Alaska has no service. The other 3 do have some amount of service, which ranges. And it sounds like we've got 2 that really focus on environmental service, and then 1 that focuses more on kind of infrastructure and the community. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. California and Hawaii are very environmentally focused service projects. And then the rebuilding program between Houston and New Orleans is really infrastructure focused, with a little bit of sort of environmental and community building focus here in New Orleans as well. We do work with some community garden projects and things like that as well.
Awesome. What would you say if there's a student who this is their first time traveling with Rustic Pathways, maybe not their first time traveling ever, but away from their family? What would be the best program that you would recommend for first time travelers?
Yeah, I think we tend to get a lot of first time travelers in both in California and on our rebuilding program. Rebuilding, I would say, is definitely more within a lot of students' comfort zones in terms of accommodations, because we're in, sort of the most comfortable accommodations with our base house and, sort of base style accommodations. But definitely, there's a lot of students who are traveling with us on that program who are super geared into community service, and that's kind of their like main motivation, and they're just like really excited about service and culture. And then I would say as well, California, it's a really exciting program, but it's also a pretty familiar destination for a lot of families. So we definitely get, I think, a lot of somewhat first-time travelers on that program as well.
Cool. And then the opposite side of the spectrum, what would you say would be the best program for students who are looking for something a little bit more advanced?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Alaska is going to be one of the more challenging, physically challenging, and definitely sometimes at times mentally challenging programs that we have in the United States. But definitely rebuilding, I would say as well, is going to be a challenge in terms of the service work that we're doing. And there's a lot of physical service work that students are doing in terms of the rebuilding projects and that kind of thing as well. So yeah, I would say between those two, even if it's, I would say rebuilding is also a great program for an experienced traveler, because like we were talking about towards the beginning of this call, I think a lot of students are really surprised by how much they get out of the culture, especially in New Orleans, and how different the culture and just environment is here. And really kind of that sense of community in the South, I think, is pretty unparalleled in a lot of other places in the country.
New Orleans are awesome. What would you say, Kate, sets the U.S. programs apart from other programs abroad?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I am, after working with Rustic Pathways abroad for years, the thing that I'm most excited about USA programs for is to get students to be excited about and to really appreciate the incredible diversity that exists in our country, and just the opportunity for adventure and stepping outside of your comfort zone and giving back in our own communities. I think that's something that we as an organization are all really, really passionate about. And I think it's really cool to give people the opportunity to kind of have those realizations and have those experiences without having to fly halfway around the world. Definitely some of our destinations are a little bit more remote, but I think there's so much beauty in the fact that like we can have these really culturally immersive and experiences where we're stepping outside of our comfort zone without leaving our own country. And so that is something that like took me a little bit longer in my travel experience and my like life trajectory to kind of like come to that conclusion. So that's what I think is like really powerful about USA programs.
Awesome. Yeah, I would agree with that. We are closing out the half hour, so I'm going to move on to a little bit of more information. During this time, if y'all have questions that have not been addressed, please type them in the question and answer section. We will get to those. I'm going to go over briefly how to enroll if you're brand new to our website and have the hand to kind of read through everything. I'm going to take you over to the website. This menu here is like your super menu. If you click here, it's going to give you a bunch of options. I always this is where you can choose different countries. In the US right here. How it works is super helpful. You can find information about flights and travel. For all of our US programs, we do not have group flights. You can arrange your own airfare if you're joining us from the US. If you're coming from outside the US, same thing, you'll arrange your own airfare, but it will be with the assistance of your personal travel advisor, which is your go-to person. They're assigned when you enroll. They're going to help you with everything from flights to forms to any other questions that arise. They're geniuses. So utilize them and the website. We have information about our scholarships, how to enroll, information about payments and things like that. I also like to point out this column here, this Inside Rustic. I know it's a lot of information to go over, but a couple of the links that I really like to point out is the student impact. At Rustic Pathways for the past several years, we've really tried to figure out how we can put numbers or how we can measure the impact that our programs are having on our students. In addition to that, the impact that our programs are having on our global communities at large. These are two really important aspects of what we do at Rustic Pathways. So I'd love to have you guys browse through that information. There's a bunch of information about the research that we're doing and how we're gathering that data. We have a health and safety page. All of this is very useful information. And then once you're ready to enroll and you have all your questions answered, again, if you're watching this as a recording and we did not cover something, feel free to give me and my team a call. There's a contact us page right down here in the corner. You can give us a call, you can chat with us, but you can also find a link where you can schedule a call so we can call you at your convenience. So either way, tons of different ways to reach us. And then are ready to enroll in the top right corner, right next to the menu. It'll take you to the application. It's a pretty straightforward process, maybe 6 or so pages, but 1 page for the student information, 1 page for yours. That goes quickly. And then once you enroll, like I said, it takes a couple business days to process your application, make sure everything's in order, and then you'll receive your welcome letter from your PTA, your personal travel advisor. So pretty basic information. I do also want to point out that we are running a promotion right now. We are getting very near to the summer and we are very excited to start preparing. I'm sure Kate is kind of like ready to rush off and continue her preparations for the summer. But for those of you who are still looking for programs and would like to take advantage of this promotion, we are offering 5 programs a week at $500 off for 5 weeks. So keep that in mind. The programs do change every single week. And I just want to show you back here on the website where you can find that information. Every week is going to have a theme. This week's Earth Day, we had a theme of all of our environmental programs. So if your student is interested in environmental conservation, awesome time to get in on those. We have a banner that will be running across the top of the website right here. You can click in there to learn more and you'll see the themes that we have for each of the weeks. We will have the promotional code that you can use on your application to get that $500 off. And then you see the 5 programs that are featured here. You can click in here. Each program page will feature the day-to-day itinerary, the available session dates, FAQs, price, all that important information. So hopefully that's all helpful. Do take a look at that. And here's just as a quick look, the different themes that we'll have coming up. And then we do have a little time for questions and answers. I haven't seen anything come through, so I'll give you 1 more second. And if I don't see any questions coming through, I do just want to say thank you, Kate, for joining us tonight. Thank you all who are watching this video, either live or recording. We hope we answered most of your questions. And again, please feel free to give me a call anytime, and I'm happy to answer any questions. And thanks for joining us. Thanks, Kate.
Thanks, Jessie.